Okay, Be'ez Hashem, starting Perek Beis. Perek Beis is sponsored. L'schus Sholem ben Chana, a Heilige Yid that is unfortunately stuck in prison in Malaysia. And Be'ez Hashem, the schus of the Torah, should be a schus that he gets out of prison. Be'ez Hashem, if you want to sponsor a share, please let me know. office@beisdavid.com. Okay, Rabbi Sai, Perek Beis, let's begin. So at the end of Perek Aleph yesterday, we pretty much explained there are two neshamas. Every yid has two neshamas. And we explained neshama number one, which was what we call the neshama about the nefesh bahamis, the animalistic soul, which we said comes from the klipas noiga, which according to the Zoya is one of the klipas that actually has a good side to it, as opposed to the klipas that the goyim have, that the neshamas are from, do not have a good side, and anything that a goy does is for his own personal benefit. And we said that all of the good and the bad midas come from that klipa, okay? Come from that neshama, that animalistic nefesh abahamis. We now move on to the nefesh elikis, which is very important to understand. Why is it that the Tanya started with the nefesh abahamis before he started with the nefesh elikis? Wouldn't you have thought the other way around would have been maybe a bit more appropriate? Interesting question that the Olam asked. The answer is because the Heilige Tanya is going with the order that it's placed into our body. When a person is born, he immediately gets the Nefesh HaBahamis. That's immediately when you're born. The Nefesh HaKis, the one that we're discussing and describing right now, a person receives when he becomes bar or bas mitzvah, which is why the Tanya went with the Seder HaDvorim of how it works in a person's body. So let's begin, Rabbi Isai. So one of the most famous lines in Tanya is right over here, and let's try to understand it. So it says like this, look, the Heilige Tanya beginning of Perek Beis. The Nefesh HaShenis BiYisrael, he, Chelek Eloka Mimal Mamish. Now, the Tanya uses the word mamish quite a few times. The emphasis on the word mamish is to tell us how emes it is and how crucial he wanted you to understand that it means that he means what he says, not a statement or a metaphor or a mashal, but it's real. By the way, the Balatanya had a group of very close Talmidim. That these were like the Spitz Talmidim, that he had a chabura with only the best Talmidim. And one of the conditions that he had of joining that chabura was that all the participants of that chabura had to chaza over the words that we just said, chelek elokam mimal mamish, the entire night, and only then they would be allowed into his chabura. And Rabbi Shemaya Shlita brings down the only reason how it's possible to lack loving someone else is because it doesn't internalize these words. Because if we really internalize the words of that every yid is a chelek elokam mimal mamish, which we're going to explain in a moment what that means, then he'll love everyone. And if you're lacking in that, maybe repeat those words just a few more times. And he brings down that if a person will be able to really get this inside it and infuse every fiber in his body with this idea, then he would never do averis, he would never fall. And even if he does fall and fall and fall and fall and fall, he'll be able to pick himself back up again because he recognizes he's a chelek elokam mimal mamish. Rabbi Shemaya says this is the root of all chasidus. Al Kaponim, what does it mean, chelek elokam mimal mamish? What does this mean? So first of all, just to give you some background, and I would like to spend a couple of minutes on explaining this because this is a crucial part of Tanya. The Balatanya over here is basically mirroring something which is written in many Sfarim. It wasn't his chiddush that we are a chelek elokam mamish, which again we'll explain what that means. But etzem, it's a borrowed term from Eiv, or if you learn art school, Job. If you know Eiv says chelek elokam mimal, not mamish, but Akoponim, it's actually referring to something else, which is why do you give me this portion? But it's a borrowed term from there, but it's very mufurish in, for example, the Reishis Chochma, the Shefa Tal, the Yoshe Levov, from Rav Hariri in the 1800s, that's the contemporary of the Heilige Baal Shem Tov HaKodesh, that would mean they all said the same idea, that they write that our neshama is a chelek of Hashem, and he brings rayas from the Torah, from Odom Arishim, with the neshamas hanging on to Odom Arishim's neshama, and Odom Arishim's neshama comes directly from Hashem. So we have many rayas, and the Balatanya was not the first one to be machadish, that our neshama is a chelek elokam mimal. Comes from, as I said, from the Torah, and there's many, many rayas to that. But what does it mean, chelek elokam mimal mamish? If we would translate it, we would say a portion of Hashem, a part of Hashem. Now, I don't want to translate it that way because let's just take a mashal. If you take a piece of apple and I'd say, can you give me a chelek, give me a part? So now part of that apple is now missing, right? It's not there because I've taken a part of it. We're not taking a part of Hashem. Hashem is not missing when we are a chelik of Him. Rather, the way that I think good to translate it is, chelik and a kamimah mamish means that we are in the nature of Hashem. That's what it means. This neshama that we have inside us that we're describing is in the nature of Hashem. It's not a piece or a chelik and a portion of Hashem. It's in the nature of Hashem in that case. Let's move on. Kumoi shekasav. Vayipach ba'apov nishmas chayim, bringing a raya from a posuk in Bereshis Perik Beis, of course referring to the Rabbeinu Shalom blowing into Adam Harishon, the nishmas chayim. Now we know that the neshama came through blowing. Unlike every other creation, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos tells us, asara ma'amoros, ma'amor is the speech. The way the Rabbeinu Shalom created the world was through speech, through dibur. The way the Rabbeinu Shalom put this neshama into Adam Harishon was through blowing. We'll explain what that means. Now we also know, the Zohar Kodesh tells us, that the Adam Harishon had within him every single neshama of Klal Yisrael that would ever be until the end of time. Which means that every one of our neshamas were by Adam Harishon. So if the Rabbeinu Shalom blew the neshama into Adam Harishon, then it was blown into us right now as well. We're a chelik of that. We get that as well. It's absorbed. Va'ato nefach, to be another raya from the Gemara. Man de nofach mitoichei nofach. Someone that blows from his insides. Perish. I'm going to say the whole sentence and then we'll explain it. Me perish mitoichiusoi umepnimiusoi. Shetoichius upnimius hachayos shebaodam moitzi benefichosoi bekoyach. Okay, what exactly does this mean? That it means, very important. Let's explain like this. Maybe as a hagdoma to understand this. When you do something with your hands, yes, it was you that decided to do it, but it's external. It's not your essence. It's not intrinsically you. It's my hands that did the action. When you say something, that's much closer to you, but it's not you. It's your speech that said it. When you think something, that's you. You are your machshavas. You are your thoughts. That's who you are. That's intrinsically who you are. Mimela, what he's saying over here is, when the Rabbeinu Shalom blew, it wasn't just with the mouth. It wasn't just air that came out, kaviyachol, of Hashem's mouth. But rather it was from the mitzias, it was from the pnimius of the Rabbeinu Shalom. It came from the inside, it came from the essence. That's what we mean over here. That means the Rabbeinu Shalom doesn't take an external neshama and blow it into us, but kaviyachol directly blew from Hashem into us, that neshama, if you understand. Kachal derech mashal. I'll give you an example. Nishmas Yisrael olu b'machshava, right? The machshavas, the neshamas of Klal Yisrael, olu b'machshava. That means the neshamas of Klal Yisrael are from the machshava of Hashem. And once again, he's pointing out that's very different to everything else Hashem created. Because Hashem created everything with dibur, with speech. Here, it was with machshava. And there's a very big difference that this neshama that we're going to be discussing at length, the nefesh elokis, that was made by the machshava of Hashem. K'diksiv, b'ni b'choyri Yisrael, bonim atem l'Hashem l'Elokechem. And we always say this, right? We're the children of Hashem. So people think it's like a nice, cute thing. It's like a song. It's a nice expression. We're children of Hashem. What does it mean? It's just a nice sort of like chizuk. We're a child of Hashem. It's not what it means. Perish. So the Heilige Baal Tanya, what does it mean we're children of Hashem? It means real. Just like a son is the extension of the brain of his father, and in the Zohar Kodesh talks all about the zera that comes out of the father, that is the maisa, what starts off the child, which comes from the moyach, the brain of the father, which means that son, the child, is an extension of the brain of his father. Kach kaviyachol nishmas kol Yisrael. So to every neshama of Ish Yisrael nimshecha, where does it come from? It's an extension. Mimachshavtoi v'chochmasoi yisbarach. It's from the machshava and the chochma of the Rabbeinu Shalom. That's why Klal Yisrael are children of Hashem. Because we're an extension, just like a child is an extension of his parents, so too we are an extension of the Rabbeinu Shalom because we came from that machshava and chochma of Hashem. Di'iyu chakim v'loi b'chochma yediyah. In other words, the Rabbeinu Shalom, we're talking about Hashem's chochma, is wise, right? But it's not the chochma, it's not the wisdom we fully understand. Elahu v'chochmasai echad. when we describe a human being, we can only describe a human being that he's wise, he's clever. But that's not his essence, that's not who he is, right? L'havdil elef havdalos, you can have, for example, a college professor that teaches ethics in the workplace, whatever. You know how you've got to be an upstanding member of community, and then at night he goes on to do who knows what, right? Because he's not got ethics, not an ethical person. He has a chokhmah in his head, but it doesn't transmit to the heart. So therefore, what we're saying over here is Rebbe Shalom is completely different to what we consider to be chokhmah. It's not the pshat that Hashem is clever. The pshat is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his chokhmah is one. U'kemoy shekosav HaRambam, the Rambam says in Hilchos Yesod HaTorah, shehu hamada, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the power to know, v'hu hayodeya, and he's the knower and the known. We don't understand what that means. We don't have any concept in our limited physical understanding of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chokhmah is. Kidiksiv, hachek elokai timtza. You think you're going to understand Hashem's wisdom? Uksiv kiloi machshavoi sai machshavoi seichem. As Hashem says, my machshavas are not your machshavas. Okay. We'll do a summary at the end, one small last paragraph, and then we'll stop for today. Va'af, sheyesh rivervois mine, chiluki madregas b'neshamas. Lemaisa, there are so many madregas of neshamas. There's so many layers and different types of neshamas in Klal Yisrael, and each one has its own darga, its own level. Yeah? Gavoya ma'al gavoya le'en kates, higher and higher and higher neshamas. Kumai, goydel mailas nishmos ha'ovois, u'Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashalom. Right, you got the neshamas of Moshe Rabbeinu. You got the neshamas of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Al nishmos dereseinu ela deikv de Mashiach shem bechinas akvayim mamish legab amoich v'arosh. And then you got the neshamas of our generation. Because of the Mashiach, the heel, the end, all the way in the bottom of the list. You got the neshamas in this generation. What are we worth compared to the moich, the brain, v'arosh, and the head? V'chein b'chol dor v'dor yesh roshe alfei yisrael shenishmos seyem heim bechinas rosh moich. And in every generation, there are those neshamas that are just like at the top of the head and the brain. They're mamish the top of the line. Compared to all of the other neshamas, which are just regular, normal, standard human beings. Even within the neshama itself has many layers. Not just different neshamas are different metzias, but also every neshama has a different layer. Each nefesh includes three things. Number one, minefesh. Number two, ruach. And number three, uneshama, which of course we'll explain. So let me just do a summary, we'll end over here. The summary is he's just told us that not only do we have a nefesh bahamis, an animalistic soul, which comes from and can also give us all the good and the bad midas that we have, but we have literally in the nature of Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol blew of himself within us, and that makes us a child of Hashem, and we have that neshama as well. Now we have to understand, what are we meant to do with that neshama? How do we utilize that neshama? And of course, we're not going to talk about that now. How does that go back to our original kasha of what's that got to do with the tzaddik Abeni and Russia, which of course we'll get to. Join us in Mitzvah Hashem next week as we continue Bez Hashem and conclude Perek Beis.